Citizens Campaign for the Environment is very excited to launch the first Long Island Sound High School Summit. And really it is designed to teach high school students to be connected to the Long Island Sound, to look at the ecological and environmental challenges we have in protecting the Sound, and also to come up with solutions. So to engage these 4 high schools has really been exciting, and it's also been advantageous. Many of them are doing creative science, studying microplastics, studying water temperature and mercury levels by the Northport power plant, studying what goes into those storm drains and what comes out of those storm drains into the Long Island Sound. Some of them are studying wetlands and spartina. They're doing sophisticated research and evaluation that'll help us promote protection of Long Island Sound, but also will plant the seed with them to be good stewards of the Long Island Sound. And frankly, those are the 2 goals of this project. You know, I think that connecting high school students to this type of valuable science will really plant a seed in them that their choices will make a difference, and their life choices will make a difference. And I think it will empower them to be able to understand that their science and their contribution to protecting the environment will have meaning. The Long Island Sound is an ecological gem to us. It's also an economic engine. But beyond that, it's our home. You know, it's really, some people consider it our front yard, some people consider it our backyard, and what we all do is we consider it home. Many people on Long Island grow up with 1 foot in the water and 1 foot on the land, holding a crab trap and holding a fishing pole. And our greatest memories really come from living by the water and experiencing the Long Island Sound. So crafting this program, teaching the high school students to be good stewards and empowering them with the knowledge to do that is really what we hope to achieve, and what I believe we are achieving through this important project.
The Atlantic Marine Conservation Society promotes marine conservation through action by engaging the public and conducting research to understand what's going on in our marine environment. Well, working on a project like this with Long Island Sound and working with high school students to engage them to understand what's going on in their backyard is part of the mission of the Atlantic Marine Conservation Society in promoting marine conservation through action and engaging the public. Well, this project on a whole is amazing just because it's taking place in Long Island Sound in an area where I grew up, where I learned how to water ski in the background, seeing where these students have engaged the environment in the same way that I did, and being able to hear how they're concerned about the environment was the biggest takeaway that I have from this, is that there's hope in our future when the students are so interested in protecting their environment. Well, it's often an interesting question is, when does science begin? And when you think about it, all of our scientists began walking around and observing what they see in nature. And high school students, whatever grade you're in, are starting out. And to get them to understand how to collect information, make observations, and be aware of their surroundings is really critical to the future of our environment.
I'm Joe Canavan. I'm a senior at Northwood High School, and we're doing a comparative study here with the water at the stacks and at Crab Meadow Beach to see if there's any temperature and chemical pollution.
We tested the water here at Stacks, Northport Power Center, and we compared that water to the same water that we tested in Crab Meadow at the marsh.
We took a kayak out onto the water and used temperature probes to collect the temperature, and we used test tubes to collect the water, and we put strips in the water for the chemicals.
To my right here, we have this boat, which we're using to monitor the storm drains in downtown in the harbor. So our goal is to monitor what goes into the storm drains, including plastics, leaves, natural pollutants, and unnatural pollutants, and whether or not these drains are being clogged up by those items and flooding back into the roads and the parking lots. So what we do with this boat is we put it in the water and we monitor what comes out of those drains that spew into the harbor itself. So this GoPro is linked to my phone, which I could live stream. So this boat has a 30-meter range on it from the controller, so we could drive it around and I could look at it on my phone and see exactly where the boat is and what we're looking at.
What we found in the storm drains were little plastic particles, and we saw other pollutants like masks and paper towels going into the drains. Long Island Sound is very important to me because it's where we all live. This is a very important space for us. We grew up here, we played in the water, and everybody goes in. It's also where our ecosystem is. This is our local environment, and we do not wish for it to become polluted.
You know, with the teacher's support, it was great. We just did some research on materials. We got a lot of those Home Depot buckets to collect water samples, and just went down within like the beaches and harbor of our community, collected those samples and took them to a lab and organized the water samplings.
Yeah, so what we're going to do is we're going to take our buckets of water and we're filtering them and putting them in like this apparatus, and then the sand and the particles and hopefully some plastics will be on filter paper, and we'll shine a UV light on them and put it under a microscope, and we'll be able to count how many particles are in the water. I mean, whether you fish like recreationally or commercially, the fish often are consuming the plastics that are in the water. So it's like people don't see it as a huge issue because you can't see the plastics, and people think of pollution as like huge mounds of plastic swimming around the ocean, but it's really like a lot closer to home than what we think.
Well, in like media and such, you always hear things about microplastics and how it's affecting our environment, and I necessarily didn't know what that means, nor did I have a hands-on experience before E-Team. So this was a wonderful opportunity to really, you know, see the community around us and like how much it really is affecting. A lot of people have the mentality of just because you know, it'll break down, it'll go away eventually, and it never really does. It just gets smaller, so we can't see the issue, but it's still there.
It was really important for students who live in the area to get involved with protecting the Long Island Sound, as this is where they've grown up, and this is where they live, and this is where they hang out. So it's important for them to see the connection that they have between their local community and the waterway in terms of plastic pollutions, nitrogen runoff, and it really it gives them that sense of connection to their local environment.
Since 2015, I've been working at the Sunken Meadows Salt Marsh with the Brentwood High School research students. Specifically, we've been looking at the effect of the restoration efforts that are ongoing there in the salt marsh at Sunken Meadow. And I'm also interested in how the ecosystem is changing subsequent to Sandy. The salt marsh has now it is an official salt marsh. When Hurricane Sandy came in 2011 and broke through and flooded the creek with salt water, we really saw a transformation occur. As a scientist and educator, I strongly believe that the mission and vision of Citizens Campaign for the Environment is critical, particularly engaging the youth of today. Our future stewards, our current stewards rely on organizations like CCE to really encourage and engage students to get out into nature. Getting kids out into nature is critical. By being out in nature, they learn how to preserve, protect, and respect. But most importantly, they get to step away from the things that they might not ever have experienced before. And they might even turn to love things that they might not have ever loved before. So working with CCE on this project has been a great honor. And I'm really looking forward to the future.
Species, Spartina alterniflora, and one area that has currently undergone a restoration process in which an invasive species has been removed and replaced with a native salt marsh species, Spartina alterniflora. And my project is studying the carbon and nitrogen loading in the sediment of both the areas, and to determine if the restoration process proves successful and if it ultimately stabilizes the ecosystem. Oh yeah, it is successful. Previously, when it undergone restoration, before the restoration process, it was all brown, and now after we restored and planted the native salt marsh species, it's all green and flourishing with plants. So my project focuses on Phragmites australis, which is a non-native species here on Long Island and the whole United States. It comes from Europe, and the reason it's so dangerous is because it poses a threat to salt marshes here on Long Island. And what Phragmites does is, when it sheds its leaves or dies, it contributes to wrack, which is an accumulation of dead vegetation. And this wrack piles in big numbers from Phragmites australis and ultimately gets washed up onto the shores of salt marshes, which smother them and kill these salt marshes, which is native here on Long Island. My project focuses on measuring how detrimental this wrack from Phragmites australis is to native salt marshes here on Long Island. And I set up 6 plots of salt marshes, 3 of which have wrack and 3 of which have wrack recently removed, exposing the bare soil. And over time, over the couple of next years, I'm gonna analyze how much growth of native species can grow in these areas of rack and no rack. And from the results I've gathered so far, it looks like wherever there's rack, no vegetation will grow at all.
My project is involved with a common cordgrass that resides in salt marshes called Spartina alterniflora. These Spartina alterniflora contribute to salt marshes, which are coastal ecosystems, and I wanted to understand the different concentrations of nitrogen. Nitrogen is basically nutrients that you would find whether it's in foods for the plants or Miracle-Gro, which is a company that works with these type of nitrogens. And I did a 6-month process with high, medium, and low nitrogen, and I wanted to see how much impact the nitrogen would have on the roots. After the 6-month process, I noticed that the high concentrations of nitrogen and the plants that I took from Crab Meadow Marsh, the plants that I found in the high level concentration actually had smaller roots than those with low concentration of nitrogen. I've grown a lot of pride for Long Island. I've grown up here, and I feel like anyone that grows up in, their specific area has pride for it, but specifically Long Island Sound, with the project that I've been doing, I never really thought that I would fall in love with the plants that I'm working with.
So my project is about collecting plastic along the marshes on Crab Meadow and Sunken Meadow. I'm going to collect those plastics and analyze them into each different types of plastic from 1 to 6. And I want to categorize those plastics and to see what people litter more. And I want to see if housing density also impacts the effects of how much plastic pollution is there. So I'm finding a lot of styrofoam, and this is alarming because I never would have thought so. And it's also very surprising how not a lot of yogurt containers and containers we use for food are not being littered. So this is a major issue, and I'm pretty sure if we litter it, we could stop it. Plastic water bottle caps, other food containers, a lot of flexible plastics as well.
My project is about researching the effects of microplastic, especially on ghost shrimp and crayfish. And crayfish are especially important because we eat them in our diet. So understanding how they affect humans is a very important aspect of my project. So far it's ongoing, but I hypothesize that the respiration will be limited, and that'll in turn decrease the reproduction as well.
So basically, I'm testing the effects of sunscreen on microalgae, and I think that's important to study because we have such a variety here in the Long Island Sound, and something so simple as putting on sunscreen every day, seeing the effects those chemicals have, I think can make a long-lasting impact. Every summer, you always start going to the Long Island Sound and swimming, and putting on sunscreen is a key component of that. So you want to make sure when you're making a conscious awareness effort to help improve the quality of the Long Island Sound and the future of it.
My project is called What Goes on the Ground Goes in the Sound. It is about water runoff, stormwater runoff pollution and oil. Basically, over 40% of U.S. water bodies don't meet up to the water quality standards, and that includes the Long Island Sound. And one of the main problems is the stormwater runoff, because most people don't realize that the way they're getting rid of their chemicals and their household chemicals, even cleaning your car, that stuff will go on the roads or pavement or anything flat, and it'll wash into the Sound and harm wildlife. Because I've always been surrounded by water growing up, it's always fascinated me, the biodiversity, and I think it would be a complete shame if things like the stormwater runoff and oil spills harmed wildlife.
My project is how to properly dispose of paint. As an artist, most of the time I won't even think about how my paint is being washed down our drains, and my community doesn't have a proper sewer system. So all of our water will end up in our septic tanks, and then it will go into the groundwater, and it will go directly into the Sound. And I want to help people become aware of that so that way we can help prevent it. I have made I will be making some posters, and I will be posting them at my beaches and at local craft stores as well. Ever since I was small, I was basically raised on the tides, and I would go scavenging and find little crabs underneath the rocks. and I would be heartbroken if I found out that my dirty paint water was directly harming all of the crabs and ocean biodiversity.
So my project was about water quality and stormwater runoff, and it was about fertilizers and how it's affecting the sound. So basically, as the fertilizer increases in the sound, it depletes the oxygen in the water, so algae starts to grow, and then it becomes algal blooms, or not a fertilizer. I'll bring this message by printing out posters that I did on a digital app, and then I'll post them around the community, like, you know, beaches and stores and stuff like that. Long Island Sound is important to me because I used to love going to the beach, and I don't know, it's a childhood thing, and I really liked fishing as a kid, and I think it was a really fun experience.
It's been really exciting and inspiring. I think in my conversations with students and with their teachers, what's shined through is their passion about protecting the environment they live in. You know, they've shared with me that we're in such a unique geographic area, and that it's important to protect it for recreational purposes, for future generations, for posterity. And they just seem really enthused about the possibility of spreading the word and sharing the knowledge that they've found during this process. So we have approximately 90 students participating. We have several in our science research courses, as well as students in our marine science classes. I've grown up on Long Island. I've certainly used the sound quite a bit, and I think that it's our responsibility to really protect it for future generations. And again, seeing the way these students are preparing these projects and spreading the word, it's inspiring to me, and it's a good reminder that we all use the sound and we all need the sound, and it's going to be an important part of our lives moving forward.
When we were inspired by working with our art teacher and a local artist to work on a storm drain project last year, and the pandemic hit, we couldn't decorate the storm drains to bring awareness to the importance of water quality. So this year we decided we needed something that we can do in our local community that will help us better understand our impact on the Long Island Sound.
What we're doing is we're monitoring the storm drains in our local area to give the town a better idea of what's in them and what they can do about it. Yeah, we're finding a lot of trash and debris, like water bottles, cigarette butts, masks. It's just a bunch of nasty stuff, and I don't want that in the Long Island Sound.
So we're finding a lot of gross things like dog bags, we're finding masks, cigarette butts, sand, anything you could think of is in the storm drain. I like to go crabbing and fishing, and I like to hang out there and tan. It's amazing.
One of my favorite pastimes is to go paddleboarding in Long Island Sound at the beaches. I love just roaming around and exploring. It's just fun to me.
If people just realize what they're doing and not just throwing their stuff on the floor, just throw it in a garbage. I'm sure there's one nearby, and it would just save the environment so much and the animals. Well, I learned a lot because before this project I had no idea about the storm drain, like what kind of stuff was going in it. And I thought everything was fine because I just thought, you know, water. Obvious, water is going to go into it, but it turns out there's so much more that actually goes into it.